When you picture a Roman emperor, you probably think of power, authority, maybe even tyranny. But then there's Claudius. His story is one of history's great puzzles. I mean, his own family saw him as a bumbling fool, yet he ended up presiding over this incredible era of expansion and reform. So was he a master of survival who was just brilliantly playing the part of an idiot? Or was he a weak man, a puppet for everyone around him? Today, we're going to unpack the ancient sources and try to find the real Claudius. It all kicks off with one of the most ridiculous scenes in all of Roman history. The year is 41 AD. The emperor, the terrifying Caligula, has just been assassinated. The palace is in chaos, everyone's running for their lives, and where is the next emperor of Rome? Hiding behind a curtain, absolutely terrified, until a soldier just happens to notice his feet. It sounds like something out of a comedy, but according to the historian Suetonius, this is exactly how the reign of Claudius began. And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? How did this man, who was a total embarrassment to his own imperial family, somehow climb to the most powerful position in the entire known world? Was it just a freak accident? Or was there way more to Claudius than anyone, and I mean anyone, ever suspected? Yeah, Claudius's path to power was anything but planned. Seriously, it was a chaotic mess that started with him being literally dragged out from behind a curtain and ended with a massive shift in how Roman emperors were even made. Okay, let's just break down how insane the sequence of events was. First, he's found. The soldiers have no idea what to do, so they just kind of carry this terrified 50-year-old man to their camp. Meanwhile, back in the city, the Senate is actually debating bringing back the Republic. They think the whole emperor thing is over. But oh no, the Praetorian Guard has other plans. They declare Claudius emperor, and he in turn promises every single one of them a massive bonus. This wasn't just a power grab. This was a complete game changer. For the first time, an emperor had literally bought the loyalty of the army, and in doing so, he made the Senate almost totally irrelevant. So this bizarre beginning only makes you wonder more about the man himself. For years, he was just this figure in the background, mocked for his limp and his stammer. Was this all an act? A brilliant way to survive the paranoid and deadly courts of emperors like Tiberius and Caligula? Or was he really the fool that everyone seems to think he was? I mean, the contrast is just staggering. On one hand, you have his own mother, Antonia, who apparently called him a monster of a man. The very first emperor, Augustus, openly worried about his fitness for any kind of public role. But then, on the other hand, this same guy was a serious scholar who studied history under Livy, one of Rome's greatest historians. Even Augustus had to admit he was confused, writing that he just didn't understand how someone so awkward could speak so eloquently in public. It just didn't add up. And here's where the whole fool narrative really starts to crumble. Because when you look at his actual reign, at what he did, Claudius turned out to be an incredibly active and effective leader. He took on these massive projects that would literally shape Rome for centuries to come. And we're not talking about vanity projects here. This was essential infrastructure on an epic scale. The brand new harbor at Ostia, that secured the capital's grain supply, which meant preventing famine. Draining the Fucine Lake, that was a mind-boggling feat of engineering that took 30,000 men 11 years to complete. And the Aqua Claudia, a magnificent aqueduct that brought millions of gallons of fresh water right into the heart of the city. Just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, the historian Pliny says the Aqua Claudia alone cost 350 million sesterces. That's an astronomical sum. Pliny basically says that if you look at these projects, you have to admit that there was nothing more remarkable in the entire world. This was not the work of an idiot. His intelligence wasn't just logistical, it was political too. When some old-school senators tried to block nobles from Gaul, modern-day France, from joining the Senate, Claudius gave this masterful speech. And we actually have a record of it, both from the historian Tacitus and from a bronze tablet found in Lyon. He used history to make his point, reminding them that Rome's greatest strength had always been its ability to include people. It shows this deep scholarly understanding of what made Rome, well, Rome. He also showed a remarkable amount of common sense. Right after he became emperor, the people of Alexandria in Egypt offered to build temples to him and worship him as a god. Now remember, he came right after Caligula, who thought he was a god. You'd think Claudius would jump at this. But instead, he politely but firmly said no, writing that those kinds of honors belong to the gods alone. It shows a really rational, level-headed approach to power. Okay, so great builder, smart politician, sensible guy. Case closed, right? He was a genius. Well, not so fast, because there's this powerful counter-narrative from the ancient sources. For all his successes, was Claudius really the one calling the shots? Or was his entire reign actually run by a corrupt inner circle of his wives and his former slaves? See, Claudius created a professional civil service, which was a great idea, but he did it in a way that drove the old Roman aristocracy absolutely mad. He put his most trusted advisors, men who were freedmen, former slaves, in charge of the most powerful departments in the government. Now, this was super efficient, but it gave men like Narcissus and Paulus an unbelievable amount of power. And according to sources like Tacitus, they used that power to become incredibly wealthy and influential. And Suetonius does not pull any punches. He flat out claims Claudius was so under their spell that he was more like their servant than their emperor, just rubber stamping whatever decisions they made. This right here is the heart of the argument for Claudius being a weak, easily manipulated ruler. And nowhere was his apparent lack of control more obvious than in his own marriage. His third wife, the Empress Messalina, was famous for being wild. But she took things to a whole new level of audacity. While Claudius was out of town, she staged a full, formal, public wedding ceremony with her lover. I mean, the nerve. The way this whole thing fell apart, at least according to Tacitus, makes Claudius look completely helpless. When his freedman, Narcissus, finally tells him what's going on, Claudius panics. He keeps asking over and over again, "Am I still emperor?" It's Narcissus who takes charge, who marches Claudius back to Rome, and who ultimately orders Messalina's execution, supposedly because he was afraid Claudius would get soft and forgive her. In this huge crisis, Claudius seems like he's just a passenger in his own life. So after Messalina is executed, a new major player enters the game, Agrippina the Younger. And she just happens to be Claudius's own niece. If Messalina was driven by scandal and lust, Agrippina was driven by something else entirely. Cold, calculating ambition for her son. And boy, was she effective. It's actually chilling. She convinces Claudius to marry her, his own niece, which was a huge scandal, and then to adopt her son, who gets a new name, Nero. One by one, she gets Claudius to promote Nero over his own biological son, Britannicus, pushing the poor kid aside and getting rid of anyone who supported him. And that brings us to the end of Claudius's reign, which, believe it or not, is just as shrouded in mystery and contradiction as its beginning. With her son Nero perfectly positioned to take the throne, Agrippina just needed to make one final move. Pretty much all the ancient sources, Suetonius, Tacitus, Josephus, agree on this. Claudius was murdered. They all point the finger squarely at Agrippina. Now, the details are a little different in each account. Was it a poisoned mushroom, a second dose in his food, a poisoned feather down his throat? But the conclusion is always the same. She killed him to make sure her son, Nero, became emperor. The aftermath was swift, almost clinical. Claudius's will, which might have named his own son as heir, was never read. Agrippina kept his death a secret for a few hours until everything was perfectly in place, and then Nero was presented to the Praetorian Guard and hailed as the new emperor. The takeover was seamless. Agrippina had won. So we're left right back where we started, with this ultimate contradiction. Was Claudius a capable leader, a master of reform and public works, who was just destroyed by the vipers in his own court? Or was he a weak man, a lucky fool, who just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and whose successes really belonged to others? The ancient writers paint both pictures for us, leaving Claudius forever as one of history's most fascinating enigmas.